After a pretty horrible round for my riders in the Austrian Grand Prix in MotoGP Fantasy, I couldn't possibly be bad 2 weeks in a row, right? Welcome to another edition of I Told You So Tuesday, where we look at my pre-race predictions and then see how they fared and whether or not I can tell you I told you so. But before we get into all that, if you could please like, follow, share, subscribe, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP content you can possibly imagine. And I'm having a blast talking to everybody in the comments, so please keep it coming. That's why we're here. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your opinion, especially if you disagree with me. I mean, come on, let's talk MotoGP. So how did we do in MotoGP Fantasy? Before I get into that exact thing, I want to talk about a couple of things that I kind of saw coming. Now, I expected Luca Marini and Honda to have a little bit better of a weekend, mid-pack Q2. I think they're starting to look better on that bike, but man, I did not expect Luca Marini to come out with the performance he did this last weekend in Hungary. He was fantastic. On a Honda that's been kind of nowhere, he's been typically the slowest Honda rider, but as I have said over and over again, Luca Marini is a slow burn kind of guy who takes things step by step, analyzes, processes, and then rides. So it's not flashy, it's not fast and furious and just he jumps on the bike and goes there, but here we see him on the same bike with new adjustments, new upgrades, new parts, slowly but surely working his way toward the front. He did this in Moto 2, he did this on the Ducati, and now he's doing it on the Honda. So everyone who hates the idea that Honda is sticking with him, why are they sticking with such a slow rider? It's just because he's Rossi's brother. Maybe they know just a little bit more than all of you in internet land. And it seemed, at least this last weekend, he kind of proved that. Really good ride from Luca Marini. I also did think this was the week we're going to see Jorge Martin be a little stronger. And even in Friday practice, he was P11, just out of that automatic Q2 position. And I was like, that's exactly where I expected him to be. Now, qualifying was disappointing. But then Sunday's race came. This man went from 16th to 4th. I did not see that coming. I can't say I told you so. I thought maybe 7th, maybe an 8th, maybe a top 10 for Jorge Martin. But he was looking race ready on that Aprilia. As soon as he figures out the qualifying, y'all in trouble. This dude is coming, and with Bezzecchi also being strong, factory Aprilia is going to be a big fat buy in MotoGP Fantasy for the last half of the season. So let's go to my fantasy team. As we know, last week was a disaster. I traded away Bezzecchi and took Pecco Bagnaia at a track that Pecco was strong at, and it bit me in the ass. So was I going to keep Pecco on the team another week? Absolutely not. So who did I trade him for this week? Pedro Acosta. And Acosta looked so good on Friday. I was expecting a pole position, a front row, to say I told you so all over the place. Qualifying didn't go as planned. The sprint race didn't go as planned. He nearly unalived a cameraman on the side of the track. It was not going well, but Sunday he does the business. He gets P2. I think that's as good as he could have hoped with Marc Marquez riding the way he is riding right now. And so I'm going to say right there, Pecco for Pedro, I absolutely told you so. Now, elsewhere on my team, I did get rid of the team that I had sitting there was Factory Aprilia. That was a dumb move or I was Factory KTM, sorry, that I had on my team. I probably should have kept them because I didn't expect Brad to be very strong this weekend. He wasn't super strong in qualifying, wasn't super strong in the sprint, but did have a pretty good showing in the main Grand Prix. I should have kept the KTM team, but I went with Gresini because when have Gresini not been both in the top 10, let alone the top 6, both fighting for the podium? Alex didn't have a penalty to contend with this week. He should be right there at the front with everybody else, right? Absolutely wrong. Alex, yet again, a disaster this weekend. Gets the penalty in Friday practice for riding slow on the racing line. Whether you agree with it or not, you think it's Gian Antonio's fault, Pecco's fault, Jack Miller's fault, it doesn't matter. He gets the penalty, has to serve it on Sunday, doesn't perform in the sprint, does not perform in the Grand Prix. Firmin Alderweireld crashes. These guys were an absolute disaster for my fantasy team this year. And this is, again, kind of a lot of people, I think, ace in the hole. You get Gresini, who's that independent small Ducati team. They were at such a discount at the beginning of the year. And then you have the number 2 guy in all of MotoGP riding for them. So it always seems like, man, it's kind of like a nice pick. We don't have to spend a lot of your capital on your MotoGP fantasy team on this team, and you get a big fat reward because both these guys are getting on the podium. And like we said, Alex Marquez, second in the standings right now. But since the summer break, obviously he had the penalty last week. This week he gets another penalty, not a good position, could not overtake anybody, didn't look comfortable, didn't look like a rider that you want on your team. And honestly, it feels weird to say, but I'm starting to think the number 2 rider in the championship is going to ride himself right off my fantasy team. I don't know if I can put up with any more Alexes. He's pulling the Alex every week now. It's 2 weeks in a row. Am I panicking? Yes. I lost 4th place to a 5th place team that had no business beating me this weekend. Our lineups, on paper, I was in such a better position than they were. The budget of my team is solid. I've got money left over. Now, yes, do I have Fabio Quartararo on my team? Wasn't expecting 1,000,000 points. All I need is a handful of points from my second-tier riders. And with my top-tier riders being locked out with Marc Marquez, again, he performs, I told you so, and Alex Marquez, I wish I could have said, I told you so. I was expecting to say, I told you so, but here we are. So Alex, as a top-tier rider, as a gold rider, I need full points out of him every single weekend, and it doesn't seem like I can depend on that anymore. He was kind of a shoo-in. Yes, he made some mistakes. He didn't race very well in Qatar. He's had some crashes, and then obviously coming back from summer break in Austria, and now in Hungary, it's just not going well for Alex, and he's looking a little bit frantic again. He's looking like Alex Marquez of last year, who showed great speed, but then when bar came to push, bar came to shove, he ends up in the gravel with Pecco Bagnaia. And this year, it's starting to repeat itself. That amazing form he's on this season is starting to disappear a little bit, especially as the other bikes are starting to come forward. I said yesterday on the podcast, is this the end of Ducati's reign of terror across MotoGP? It very well could be, because we are seeing KTM and Honda and Aprilia come to the party in a massive way, and the Ducatis are finding it a little more difficult. Not impossible. We still had them up at the front. I mean, remember the sprint. Remember a guy named Marc Marquez. But they are finding it a little more difficult to come to the front as easy. So overall, my fantasy team, Marc Marquez, absolutely told you so. Alex Marquez, not so much. Pedro Acosta, absolutely. I'll take the I told you so for his Sunday Grand Prix performance. And Fabio Quartararo is exactly where I thought he was going to be. Not worth a trade. If in hindsight I would say, well, maybe it would have been better to keep factory KTM and trade away Fabio and not go with Gresini, but who saw that coming? Constructor is still the Ducati factory. Absolutely, I told you so. And Gresini, a big fat, no way, I'm sorry, I will never do it again. Please forgive me for my incompetence. But, that's why we play the game. I'm still 4th place in my fantasy league out of 30-something teams, and I'm in the top 600 out of something like 5,000 in the U.S., so I'll take it. My first year playing. I'm just learning the rules of the game, folks. All right, thank you so much for tuning in, and we're going to do all of this next time we have a Grand Prix and maybe even some stuff in between, so make sure you're following along and watching. Thank you so much for joining me.